If you're on the progressive left, I don't even think it's debatable to assert that Bernie Sanders is the best candidate. He's the furthest left, he's a real social democrat, and he's someone who actually could bring about a real political revolution, a Reagan-esque revolution where we shift the Overton window back to the left and we actually implement policies that would help out the working class. Now, as we weigh out different candidates and who's the best and who's worst and who has the best record and who has the best shot at defeating Donald Trump, Amber Frost of my favorite political podcast, Chapo Trap House, she penned an op-ed for The Baffler where she did a phenomenal job of putting everything into perspective. Basically, the argument is that we are at a time where we are going to look back at this moment now, and we're going to realize that we had the chance to really make change, but this is going to be the moment. Make no mistake about it, where we're going to see that our country either did or didn't take bold action to bring about real change. And really, I think the overarching message is, do you want to be part of that movement? Do you want to look back at this moment now and think, I did everything I could to get Bernie Sanders elected? Win or lose, we did everything to bring about positive change. And that's what this article is about. Amber starts off the article talking about how 3 years ago she attended a draft Warren rally, which she described as painfully nerdy. And look, at this time, we all wanted Warren to run and challenge Hillary Clinton because, she's to the left of Hillary Clinton, and there was really nobody else who could bring about social democracy or even anything that is close to social democracy besides Elizabeth Warren. Nobody expected Bernie Sanders to run. But what Amber says here is that at the end of the day, Elizabeth Warren is no Bernie Sanders. She's an incrementalist. In 2013, when the fight for 15 was starting to gain prominence, Elizabeth Warren proposed an increase that was only $10 an hour, and not just $10 an hour that year, gradually, over multiple years. She proposed a gradual solution to dealing with student loan debt. She never really talks about unions, and while she's focused on the criminality of Wall Street, which is good, she rarely talks about issues like Medicare for all and education. In other words, we all tried to convince ourselves that Elizabeth Warren was something that she wasn't. She describes herself as a capitalist to her core, something along those lines. So the question is, now that we got what we wanted, I guess, where Elizabeth Warren is running, why not back Elizabeth Warren? And simply put, as Amber says it, because it's Bernie, bitch. Now here's what she goes on to argue. It was true then and it's true now. Bernie Sanders is the best candidate, the only candidate who can be considered anything even close to a socialist and the one to beat Trump. President Sanders isn't some idealist fantasy. He is our best bet by a mile. He has consistently polled as the most popular politician in America since the primaries, and while everyone else has been tweeting or following up with 23andMe, Bernie pressured Amazon into raising wages, followed up by going after Walmart, condemned Saudi Arabia, and sponsored the resolution to end support for the war in Yemen, introduced the No Money Bail Act, committed to a federal job guarantee, campaigned so powerfully for Medicare for all that he shifted the entire Democratic Party and saved a woman from being hit by a car. Not only is he the best candidate politically, as in the only social democrat, he has the best chance of giving the pragmatists what they say they want: a presidential win. Unfortunately, a few of my media colleagues appear to have caught the Warren bug yet again, but this time around, she lacks the good sense to refuse to run. Elizabeth Warren's politics aren't impressive, and they never have been. All she has ever leaned on is a rigid obsession with the sort of basic financial regulation that barely mitigates capitalism's greatest crimes. She's not charismatic and appears to have absolutely zero understanding of what voters want in a candidate, as indicated by her pre-campaign soft launch on a bit of specious family lore about Native American heritage. Literally no one cares, and yet she keeps doubling down on it, and that's because she's weak. She chokes, she flinches, she reacts every time Trump insults her, and thus, the public is far more familiar with her defense of Orange Man is mean to me ethnic delusion than they are her accountable capitalism act. Really inspiring name there, Liz. Warren, who didn't stop voting Republican until 1995, said in 2011, "I was a Republican because I thought that those were the people who best supported markets." I think this is not true anymore. Again, displaying her tone-deaf penchant for doubling down when the situation desperately calls for changing the subject, she explained further, "I was a Republican at a time when I felt like there was a problem, that the markets were under a lot more strain. It worried me whether or not the government played too activist a role." Then she declined to say whether she voted for Ronald Reagan. There's no reason to believe that a goody-goody technocrat would fare better in 2020 than fellow neoliberal loser Hillary Clinton did in the prior presidential cycle. So understand that her criticism of Elizabeth Warren is harsh. So harsh that I don't even know that I would fully agree with everything she said, but the point that she's making, the overarching argument, is that Elizabeth Warren is not the savior we wanted her to be. Elizabeth Warren can't be anything other than Elizabeth Warren, and when given the choice between Warren and Trump, there's no question about it. I would support Elizabeth Warren, but we need to understand that if we truly want what the left has been vying for, which is a social democracy on par with the countries we see in Scandinavia, then Elizabeth Warren is not the person that's going to bring about that level of change. It's just a fact. She's not going to do that, and I want her to prove me wrong if she's elected, and I'll be rooting for her to prove me wrong. But at the end of the day, we have someone who's the real deal, who has said the same thing throughout the entirety of his life. And that individual is Bernie Sanders. Now, when it comes to the other candidates, Amber continues saying Barack Obama was the very last horoscope candidate, a politician who managed to speak so vaguely that his platform could mean anything to anyone. It's not going to work this time around. The Democratic Party is not going to be able to trick people into believing that Liz Warren is a social democrat. Ditto Kamala Harris, a woman whose duplicitous record as a prosecutor includes the defense of the death penalty, 3 strikes laws, and the imprisonment of single mothers for the truancy of their children. You really think you can convince anyone that Kamala Harris is a woman of the people? Sherrod Brown has gone all in with Russiagate hysteria. Also, he signs his tweets. And before you even think of it, don't bother with Beto, who is to the right of all of the aforementioned and votes to the right of the median Democrat. His district is majority Democratic, so he could plausibly vote to storm the Winter Palace and still keep his seat, but he joined the New Democrat coalition in order to advance business interests. You can't astroturf any shitty neoliberal hack into the hearts and minds of the Bernie voter. If you could, we'd have President Hillary right now. But as for the liberal media, and for those who would disingenuously invoke identity politics to attack the socialist, just remember the magic words. I know what you're doing right now, and it doesn't work on me. Remember, they're trying to trip you up, wear you down, and waste your precious time. Luckily, they're utter clowns, elite whiners who pout that everyone is being too mean to them and to their favored milquetoast candidate. The hit pieces against Bernie have already started to pour in, and we cannot concede a single inch to bad faith liberals. Steel yourselves against the pseudo-progressive manipulation tactics and moral blackmail that put you on the back foot. Partisan isn't a dirty word. It's nice out here on the right side of history, and if you keep sitting on that fence, you're gonna get splinters in your ass. So hop aboard the Bernie train. We got ourselves a winner. It's Bernie, bitch, and it's the only game in town. And regardless of the smear campaign that the establishment is already launching against Bernie Sanders, regardless of all of the counterfeit progressives who are trying to pretend to be as progressive as Bernie Sanders, this is the point in a lot of our lives when we're going to look back and we're going to realize that this was the opportunity, the one opportunity perhaps that our generation got to truly make a difference, to truly bring about change. And for that reason, the left should unite behind Bernie Sanders, because he's our only chance at social democracy, and really he's our best bet at beating Donald Trump. So the overarching takeaway from this article here is really great. I think It's good to have these types of analyses where somebody puts it all into perspective. Because when you're in the midst of battle and you're trading blows with corporate Democrats and exchanging insults on Twitter, it's hard to step back and look at the bigger picture, and it's easy to get demoralized when you see all of the hatred and smears lobbed against Bernie Sanders. But understand that when you step back and when you look back at this moment, it's going to be clear that those fighting for Bernie Sanders are fighting for justice, racial justice, social justice, and we're fighting to make sure that future generations actually have a fighting chance. And if there's going to be a political revolution in this country that's on par with the Reagan Revolution, then we need it to be someone who's dedicated to moving the Overton window, who's actually a social democrat. And simply put, there's nobody else in that race that can do this. It's Bernie Sanders.
Girly Mike Fettuccine needs your support on Patreon. What a loser. Visit patreon.com/Humanist Report to support the low ratings Humanist Report. Sad. My views are much higher.